The Rugby Championship will be won or lost on Saturday when the Springboks host Los Pumas. In this video, you will get a front row preview to the strengths, the weaknesses, and the changes that the teams have made. I'll also talk a little bit about Manie Libbok, and at the end of the video, I will give you my prediction for what I think is going to happen at the Mbombela Stadium in Nelspruit. Let's begin by taking a look at the two teams, starting with the Springboks, who have made 9 changes plus 1 positional switch. In the front row, we have Oxenche, Bongimbonambi, Frans Malherbe, and completing the tight 5, Eben Etzebeth and Ruan Nortje. The back row consists of captain Siya Kolisi, Pieter-Steph du Toit and Jasper Visser. Let's move on to the back line now. Jaden Hendrikse and Manie Libbok are the half-back combination. Kurtley Arendse and Cheslin Colby on the wings, with Damien Dialende and Jesse Creel in the centres. Apelele Fassi is your fullback. And here comes the bomb squad. Malcolm Marx, Gerard Steenekamp, Vincent Koch, Aldrich Lowe and Kwagga Smith in what is a 5-3 split this time round. Kobus Reinach, Andre Pollard and Lucanio Am are the backline players on the bench. Now, Los Pumas have made 7 changes of their own. We'll start in the front row. Thomas Gajo, Julian Montoya, their captain, and Joel Sclavi. That's as it was in Santiago del Estero. Pedro Rubiolo, he maintains his position in the second row, but he is now joined by the veteran Thomas Lavanini. Juan Martin Gonzalez comes off the bench and starts at 6. Santiago Grondona is at 7, with Joaquin Oviedo taking up the 8th man position. Let's move on to the back line. I'm surprised, and it can only be an injury, I would have thought, that Bertrano is out of the side. Gonzalo Garcia is instead the scrum half, with Thomas Albornoz, last week's man of the match in my view. Mateo Carreras and Rodrigo Iskro are on the wings, with Santiago Chocobares. What a game he had on Saturday. He will be in the midfield with Matias Moroni, and Santiago Carreras will come in at fullback. And then we call them the bomb squad. The Argentines called them the finishers. Ignacio Ruiz, Ignacio Cages, Pedro Delgado, Franco Molina, he drops to the bench, as does Pablo Matera. That's quite an interesting one. Lautaro Basan Velez and Lucio Cinti, as well as Juan Cruz Machia, make up the finishers. Right, now the correct thing to do would be to compare the two lineups, so let's begin up front. Starting with what South Africa has, Oxenche, Bongimbonambi and Frans Malherbe as a front row, doesn't really get any stronger than that for the Boks at the moment. Compare that to what Argentina have, Thomas Gajo, Julian Montoya and Joel Sclavi. You've got to give the front row to South Africa, no doubt about that. How about the second row? Pedro Rubiolo and Thomas Lavanini for the Argentines. South Africa have Eben Etzebeth and Ruan Nortje. Now, we've seen in the past, Etzebeth and Lavanini have exchanged pleasantries, shall we say. So there's a little bit of a rivalry there that could resume. But overall, I mean, you've got to say that Etzebeth towers above Rubiolo in terms of overall prestige in the game. I think that with that in mind, you would also say that Lavanini is ahead of Ruan Nortje. But I think as combinations go, I think maybe the South Africans might just have the edge, but I'm happy to call that a draw. So the front row, definitely South Africa. I think as a tight 5, also South Africa. But I'm thinking of the lineouts, and I'm thinking that Rubiolo and Lavanini can certainly give Etzebeth and Nortje a test, especially because of the experience that Lavanini now brings to the second row compared to what we saw last week in Santiago del Estero when Franco Molina was playing in the second row. Let's have a look at the loose forwards now. Siya Kolisi, our captain, Pieter-Steph du Toit, he's back as well, and then you've got Jasper Visser at 8th man, and I think that that is a combination that is easily better than what Argentina are bringing to the table this week round. Juan Martin Gonzalez, he's back in the team, although I think that that is mostly because of the injury to Marcos Kremer. I was surprised that Pablo Matera is dropping to the bench. Santiago Grondona comes in with Joaquin Oviedo. He had a great game in Santiago del Estero, it has to be said, but overall, I think if you look at their 3 and you compare it to our 3, South Africa has to have the edge there. So in terms of the scrums, it's going to be South Africa. I think the lineouts are also going to go to South Africa. I know we had some trouble in the lineouts last week. Malcolm Marx, for example, not always finding his jumpers, but that aside, don't forget this week, Eben is starting. You got Sia back as captain. Peter Steph du Toit is there. Jasper Visser is there again. I just think that our pack looks so much stronger this week. It's the same pack that started against the All Blacks in Cape Town. And the only real thing that you're going to say there is what is going to happen in the loose and at the breakdown. And I think that with Matera and Kremer not there for Argentina this week, certainly not in the starting team as far as Matera goes, I've got to give the edge to South Africa. Okay, so that's a look at what's going on up front, which is, of course, where it all starts. And I'm going to give it to South Africa. Again, the scrum is better. I think our lineouts are going to be better than what we saw in Argentina last week. And I'm going to give us the edge there. And then you talk about what's going to happen at the breakdown, what's going to happen in loose play. And I think South Africa has the edge there as well, which is going to make it very, very difficult for Felipe Contepomi's men. Now, let's have a look at what's going on in the back line. So we'll start with South Africa. I was surprised. I thought that it would again be Kobus Reinach and Andre Pollard. Instead, Jaden Hendrickse and Manie Libbok are the starting halfbacks. That's very, very interesting. Personally, I think it's somewhat risky, but nevertheless, it is what it is. If we look at what Argentina have got on their side, Gonzalo Garcia, he comes in for Bertrano, who I thought had a great game last week in South America, and then Thomas Albornoz. And I'm going to have to say, guys, I won't lie, I don't know enough about Garcia to give a proper opinion on him as an individual. So maybe Jaden Hendrickse I would give the edge to, just purely because I don't know a lot about Garcia. But Albornoz, absolutely based on last week's performance, he is going to come up trumps against Manie Libbok for me. So I think that maybe at best, from Argentina's perspective, we have parity as far as the halfbacks go. In midfield, Damien Dialende and Jesse Creel for South Africa. Argentina have got Santiago Chocobares, who had a superb match last time round, and Matias Moroni, who comes into the side. He's one of the changes that Contepomi has made. I think that Argentina have got a very good midfield there, but you're coming up against Dialende and Creel, and you've got to give the edge to the Springboks, I feel. Out wide, Kurtley Arendse and Cheslin Colby. They will be coming up against Mateo Carreras and Rodrigo Iskro. I think we saw Carreras as a very dangerous man last week at the Estadio Único Madre de Ciudades. But still, having said that, I've got to give the edge to Arendse and Colby. And then they've got Santiago Carreras starting at fullback this week. Now, he's a dangerous player and a man I rate, but I must be honest, after watching Albornoz last week, it's very difficult to argue that he should come into the side ahead of Albornoz. So Albornoz at 10 and Carreras at 15. To be perfectly honest with you, it's almost like, from my point of view, I get the sense it's like what the All Blacks do. You've got Beauden Barrett, who's at his peak, maybe was the best fly half in the world. We'll just move him to fullback and then move Damian McKenzie into 10, or Richie Mwanga, or perhaps Damian McKenzie could be at fullback and then you move Beauden Barrett back to 10. So a little bit of interchanging taking place there. Santiago Carreras is a dangerous customer, no doubt about it. And I think that he might, just because of international experience, have the edge over Apelele Fassi, even though I really like Fassi. But let's be honest, he didn't really have the best of games last time round. And I can't tell you, I really want to see Fassi doing well for the Boks. I said at the beginning of 2021 that with Willie Leroux getting older, perhaps the door was open for Fassi to become our first choice fullback. That's 3.5 years ago now, and it hasn't quite happened for him. And I'll be honest with you, I would love to see him secure, probably at this stage, the second place fullback position in the Boks squad, because obviously Damian Willemse is still to come back from his injury. All right, let's have a look at our bomb squad and what they call their finishers. Malcolm Marx, Gerard Steenekamp and Vincent Koch, that's the new front row coming on roughly around the 45-minute mark. And Argentina are going to send on some inexperienced players, it has to be said, but Ignacio Ruiz, Ignacio Caches, and Pedro Delgado. Again, there's no ways that the Springboks don't win that head-to-head. In terms of other players that the Boks have to bring on, remember it's a 5-3 split, Elrich Low and Kwagga Smith. And what have we got to contend with from Argentina's side? Franco Molina and Pablo Matera. Very difficult to make a comparison there because Molina is a lock. Now, Pieter-Steph du Toit could potentially move to lock. We've already seen that happen this season, with Matera obviously coming on as a loose forward. Now, even though I think Kwagga Smith is the best player in the world coming off the bench, I do not think he's a better player than Pablo Matera, and I might be a little biased because Matera is my favorite Puma. So I'm going to say that in terms of the front row, South Africa have the edge. Molina and Matera versus Low and Smith. I mean, from our point of view, we might say there's parity. I might even go so far as to say that Argentina might hold the edge, because even if you say that what Kwagga does coming off the bench would match whatever Matera generally brings to the system, I think that Molina might give you more than what Elrich Low gives you, even though we're talking about players in different positions here. So maybe Argentina get the edge there. And then if we look at what they have in terms of the backs, Lautaro Basan Velez, Lucio Cinti, and Juan Cruz Machia, compared to what South Africa have coming on, Kobus Reinach, Andre Pollard and Lucanio I don't think it's a contest. I think the Springboks easily have the better combinations there. So now that I've made that assessment, there is a special mention that I have to give to Eben Etzebeth. By now, you will know that when he runs onto the field in Nelspruit, it will be for the 128th time as a Springbok. No one else would have made more appearances for South Africa in our history. Currently, the record is held by Victor Matfield and Etzebeth together with 127. Etzebeth is about to hold that record by himself. What a giant of a man he has been for South Africa. Two-time Rugby World Cup champion. He is on the cusp of becoming a two-time Rugby Championship winner, and just for good measure, he currently also holds the Mandela Plate and the Freedom Cup, as well as the Qatar Airways Cup. So well done, Eben Etzebeth. There's a nice South African word for a man like him in rugby: Eyster. Now, speaking of South Africa and the Rugby Championship, Etzebeth on the cusp of winning his second title. This is also South Africa being on the verge of winning a second Rugby Championship since 2019. That's the last time we won it. And that was a shortened version of the tournament because of the Rugby World Cup that year. So South Africa, Argentina, Australia and New Zealand only played each other once each that year, whereas this year, the full version, we've seen each other play twice against one another. Now, South Africa has never won a full edition of the tournament, but there is a danger, because if Argentina beat us and secure a winning bonus point, so they would need to score 3 tries more than what we do, and we don't get a bonus point, a losing bonus point in this instance, then Los Pumas would win the Rugby Championship for the first time in their history. So we cannot take anything for granted. Nothing is cast in stone just yet, and we need to be on guard. Having said that, the one thing we've seen from Argentina this year is that they have, and maybe even traditionally, is that they have struggled to put together winning performances in consecutive weeks. And I think that that is something that is going to help us at Mbombela Stadium. We saw Argentina beat the All Blacks in New Zealand, and in the very next week, they were blown away by the Kiwis. We saw them lose to the Wallabies at home, a match that, let's be honest, they should have won, but they didn't do enough, and the Wallabies beat them at the end by 1 point. The week thereafter, they put a record score past the Wallabies. So that shows you what they can do and what they're capable of. And now they've beaten South Africa. What will happen the next week? I would like to believe, given the patterns of play, that it has to be a Springbok victory. But what will be of massive motivation to Contepomi's team is the fact that they could actually win a Rugby Championship title here for the first time in their history. The way I see it, it's almost like a boxing match. South Africa are the champions, or the champion fighter in this instance, that holds the title and is fighting at home. Argentina is the challenger, and the only way that they can take that belt away from the South Africans is by actually beating us. It can't be a draw, it can't be a close contest, because then the judges are going to give it to the Springboks. So basically, Los Pumas will have to knock us out before round 12, if that makes sense. If you're a boxing fan, I know you would have appreciated that analogy. Now, as previously alluded to, I think we'll dominate in the scrums. I think we've got more than enough to dominate in the lineouts, or at least have parity. But I think we'll do more than just parity. I really think that given Peter Steff coming back into the team, Captain Sia is back, Eben is starting, I think we'll be just fine in the lineouts. It's at ruck time. It's at the breakdown. That's where I worry a little bit. But having said that, I do think, again, that we are going to be stronger. And I think the fact that Matera is off the field and that Kremer is not playing this week is something that will help us. However, don't forget, Matera is going to come on at a later stage. So if we have a close contest, or even with Argentina leading going into those final 20 or so minutes, things could get very hairy in Nelspruit. What can we say about the backline? It's very evident, based on what we saw in Santiago del Estero, that both teams like to run the ball. You didn't have to watch that match to know that. The Springboks, as we know, with the so-called Tony Ball experiment, have certainly shown a willingness to go wide, and much wider than in previous years. Argentina are a running rugby team, there's no doubt about that. Chocobares, a very dangerous runner, it has to be said. I think with Carreras, Santiago Carreras, playing at fullback, that's just an invitation to attack. And it's very clear that we're going to do the same thing with Jaden and Manie as our halfbacks. I think if we had seen Kobus and Handré Pollard as the starting 9 and 10, you could say, okay, maybe South Africa are going to try and keep it a little bit safer, be a little bit more conservative. There's not a chance Rassie has decided to do otherwise. I'm telling you, if you think this is going to be like a 15-12 kind of game, it's not happening. This is going to be a running rugby match, and it's going to come down to the defences to see who wins. Now, I believe South Africa's defence, historically anyway, is stronger than what Argentina have. Having said that, we saw last week that both attacks were able to slice through their opposing defences like a hot knife through butter at times. It was very concerning to see what Argentina did to our defence, but by the same token, we did very similar things to their defence. Now, I'm pretty sure that both teams will be looking to tighten up this coming week, but while maintaining that attacking flair. Something else that is very interesting, we can talk about discipline. Well, that's one area where Argentina have been excellent this year in the Rugby Championship. They have not received a single yellow or red card in each of their 5 matches so far. And you can say what you like, but if you want to win, you've probably got a better chance doing that when you have all your players on the field. Yes, I am talking to you, New Zealand, who keeps getting yellow cards in the last 20 minutes of matches and then looks to blame other people for your defeats. Now, some people have said that Kurtley Arendse played a big role in South Africa's defeat last week to Argentina for his yellow card, because at the time the Springboks were leading. We were 2 tries up. His yellow card took place, and suddenly Argentina scored 12 unanswered points while Arendse was off the field, and then they scored some more points after he came back, because obviously the momentum had changed somewhat. I do think that's a little harsh, because it was early-ish in the match. To me, too early for us to be able to definitively say, oh, it was because of him. And also, let's be honest, this is not a blame game, it's a team game. And we have to be honest, Kurtley Arendse is a valuable member of the Springbok side, and yes, he made a mistake, yes, he got a yellow card, but I don't think we can say that it's because of that the Boks lost. Yes, we lost momentum, but I also feel that if you lose momentum somewhere around the 15th to 20th minute of a match, it's something that you should be able to get back fairly quickly, fairly easily. We saw that actually last week. In the second half, South Africa were much better, much stronger. We just didn't score enough points in the second 40, and that's why we lost. Okay, now as promised, let's talk a little bit about Manie Libbok. I had quite a bit to say about him in my Springboks Argentina review video last week. If you haven't watched that one, I'll put a link to that video in the description area, and you can go and get a full bite of what I had to say about Libbok and that situation. But he is in the starting team this week, and so it is imperative that we judge him and analyze his place in the team for this week. So what can we say on this occasion about Manie Libbok? Let's begin by looking at how Rassie Erasmus sees the situation. It's not just up to him to find solutions for his goal kicking, it is something we have to do as a team, and we are working on a plan. Now, on the one hand, I think it's great that Rassie is backing Manie. It shows trust and confidence in the player, and I think that that can only be something that will help his self-belief, which is very important in professional sport, and indeed in any sphere of life. We also know the Boks are changing the way they are playing. We've already seen it, so-called Tony ball, a willingness to go wide, an emphasis on being more attacking, more creative, and bringing more flair to the picture, which is exactly what Manie Libbok does. And thus the feeling is that perhaps Libbok could be the best man to pull the strings at 10. We have a pack that can dominate, we have an inside centre that is something of a human wrecking ball, and we also have a strong kicking game overall. So what does Manie do that somebody else doesn't? Yes, as we've said before, flair, he has superb creative and attacking abilities, a natural distributor of the ball, who it is hoped can cause chaos inside the Tony Brown system. Now, okay, Pollard maybe doesn't really do that. But I would say that while Pollard maybe isn't as creative, I do think he's creative enough. 10 is usually the man that teams play off. So if he gets his timing or his depth wrong, then it allows the opposition defense to easily adjust. But again, for me, the most important thing is that every team needs a first-choice goal kicker. And just my opinion here, but I would put that ahead of a creative fly-half. Why? Because as much as I understand that we are trying to become a 7-14-21 team, the reality is that we are still pretty much a 3-6-9 team. And while that remains the case, we simply have to have a reliable goal kicker in the team. Because what is going to happen when we get to a Rugby World Cup quarterfinal, semi-final or final? Do you want a guy who is known for creating tries? Yes, that would be nice. Or do you want a guy who you know is going to put the ball over the posts more times than not? I'll let you decide what you think, and you can let me know in the comment section down below. Right, score prediction time. Now, given everything I've said, I do think that this match is heavily stacked in South Africa's favour. Argentina have not put in consecutive performances worthy of victories, even though they are going to be motivated to beat us this week because the Rugby Championship is on the line. But again, I'm going to say this. I think we're better in the scrums, better in the lineouts. I think we're going to be better at the breakdown, at least until Matera comes on. I think we're going to keep things a little bit tighter, not allow things to be as loose as they were in Santiago del Estero. I think in the back line, we're going to be stronger. I said this, I do worry about what's going on at halfback for South Africa, and we saw what Albornoz can do last week. But I do think that overall, we're going to be better than them in every area, and I think that our bomb squad is better than their finishers as well. And so even though I think it's going to be a little bit closer than what I may have originally thought, I had a score in mind for this game actually a week ago, and I'm actually going to stick with that score. It could be that it's a close game and then we just score a try right at the end to extend the overall winning margin. But my take for Saturday in Nelspruit at the Mbombela Stadium is South Africa 29, Argentina 15. Now, I'd like to know what you think the score is going to be. Again, you can let me know in the comment section down below. And while you're looking around there, you might see that there's a button with a heart and a $sign inside of it. That's called the Super Thanks button. If you don't see it, there's a button with 3 dots. And if you click on that, then you will see the heart with the $sign. And if you click on that, it will allow you to make a highlighted comment. I promise that I will reply to it and hit the heart button on your comment. And when you do that, it will invite you to make a small donation to my channel. Why would you want to do something like that? Well, maybe you like my content and you'd like to support me, but what I'm trying to do, guys, is travel to Australia in 2027 to cover the Rugby World Cup for you. I want to give you daily content from down under in 2027. And in order to help me make that happen, I'm asking you to make a small donation. The Super Thanks button, that's the way that you can do it. If you're not yet ready to send any money in my direction, another way that you can help me right now is by looking around there for the like button, and I would invite you to croc roll that like button. That's the way to do it. You can also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. And since we're talking about the Springboks and Argentina, well, once upon a time, Louis Kuhn kicked a last-minute penalty against Los Pumas in Port Elizabeth to beat them by just 1 point. I did an interview with Louis about that and the rest of his career. That video is appearing on your screen over here. And another man who put a record score on Argentina, he's actually from Nelspruit originally, is former Springbok coach Heineke Meyer. I did a full interview with him about his time as the Bok coach. It's over here. You can go and watch any of those two right now, and I will see you in the next video.